So it seems that this whole Gibson Dean lawsuit thing is back on. Yes! More Gibson drama.
Just play the damn thing.
If you haven't heard yet, there's been an article or two or three by now going around on all the guitar websites, guitar.com, and I think Premier Guitar had also. I think they were the first ones to publish it, but then they took it down. I don't know what that was all about, but that seems to be what happened. At any rate, if you remember, a year or two ago, I guess it was probably last year sometime, that Gibson officially won their lawsuit that they had filed against Dean Guitars, aka I think Armadillo Incorporated as their parent company. They had actually won that lawsuit. And the court had awarded them, I believe it was $4,000. Gibson had actually won that lawsuit, and the lawsuit, of course, was about Dean manufacturing, their guitars, specifically their Z model, their V model, and a few others, but those two were the big ones. Manufacturing those two models, and that were copyright infringement on Gibson's own intellectual property, obviously being the Explorer and the Flying V. Based on some other things that are going on in the world right now, I'm really beginning to believe that this whole thing is just contingent on which judge is sitting on the bench from one day to the next and what kind of mood they're in. Because if you look at the history of all of these guitar lawsuits, I didn't think Gibson was going to win that one at all, but they did. And the reason why I didn't think that they were going to win, and I was not alone in this, is because Dean had been manufacturing those guitars since, specifically the Z and the V, since the late 1970s. I think those first came out in 1977. That's the year I was born. I turned 47 this year. For whatever reason, Gibson never once filed a lawsuit or decided to do anything about it to protect their own intellectual property against Dean until just a few years ago. And I think that lawsuit was initially filed, that whole process was initially filed under the previous regime, and because, the process was already started, I think legally, I assume anyway, they just had to roll with it. I'm not a lawyer. I don't, I'm just watching from the sidelines like everybody else and trying to understand it all as best I can. Based on what I have learned and based on how some other guitar lawsuits have gone in years past, I have been under the impression that, if a company does not actively protect their intellectual property, and, which in this case would include beginning with sending a cease and desist letter of some kind decades ago. But if a company does not make any effort whatsoever to protect their intellectual property, eventually it becomes public property and there is no more intellectual property to protect, therefore being fair game for everybody. Hence why so many people are able to make the Les Paul shape, so why so many people are able to make the Strat shape, and why so many people are able to make all of these different guitar shapes that that have been around for decades now, we're all so familiar with. Headstocks, different story. Headstocks are able to be copyrighted, as I've understood it based on previous lawsuits again. Headstocks are able to be copyrighted, and I believe there were a couple of headstock instances that were part of this particular lawsuit. So, in a nutshell, that's what the whole Gibson Dean lawsuit thing was about. So, a year ago, it finally came to a head. They went to trial, all that stuff, etc., etc. The court decided that Gibson was, in fact, the winner. They awarded Gibson a whopping $4,000 for damages, and that was pretty much the end of it. Other than Dean Guitars filing an appeal with the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. Well, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals came back and said, "Yeah, we don't think so. Maybe not quite. This isn't quite over yet." And Dean has won the appeal. So, like I said, now we're back on. I was really, really surprised a year ago at the verdict of the original trial. I didn't think Gibson had a prayer of winning any part of it whatsoever, or any money. It was kind of a joke. It wasn't a joke, but you had to laugh a year ago, when Gibson won a whopping $4,000 from that lawsuit, Dean was kind of considering that a win as well, because of $4,000, and then they have guitars that cost more than that. So that wasn't a terrible amount of money that it cost them. However, I believe within 24 hours of that trial, Dean also had all of those guitar models removed from their own website and all of their dealer websites. I just checked, and even as of right now, the couple of dealer websites that I checked, there is not a Dean Z or a Dean V anywhere on any of the dealer websites. So those models are still off the table for customers to buy. Can't sell them. Can't sell them. Dean can't advertise them still, as a result of that lawsuit. But now that it's going back to the court after Dean has won the appeal, now we're going to see what happens. I don't anticipate Gibson getting another win here. I really don't think it's going to happen. I think Dean's going to wind up winning the whole thing. That's going to be the end of it. We're going to get to buy Dean Z's and V's again, and all the other stuff that was part of that lawsuit. But those, like I said, those are the two big ones. But I don't think Gibson's going to fare well a second time around in court. I really don't. I think personally, the court got it wrong the first time around, and it shouldn't have gone this long. But like I said, seems to be the judge that was on the bench that day and the mood that the judge was in, based on a number of rulings that we have seen here in recent months. So, and personally, I think that's the way that it should be. I'm not bashing Gibson or anything like that. I personally think that they've, under their new leadership in the last few years, they've turned things around. I think their consistency has improved. I think their, I think their quality, the quality of their products has improved. I think they're doing a lot of things right. I really do. Not perfect. Yes, they're still, you still pull a Gibson with sharp frets and off the wall guitar shops and stuff like that. I get it. That stuff's still out there. But they're still a big guitar company. They manufacture a lot of guitars. They're not all going to be perfect. I think even Gibson will tell you that. Yeah, I'm not going to deny that they've still put out a few gaffes here under their new leadership. The most recent one being that weird limited run, grossly overpriced tulip looking thing. I don't know what that was about or who thought that was a good idea, but apparently somebody did. So I mean, like I said, Gibson's not perfect. I'm not trying to pretend that they are, but I am going to give them credit. I think that I do believe they have in fact come a long way. I think some of the brands that they have taken over have also come a long way. Epiphone's quality is about as good as it's ever been right now. The Kramer guitars that they're putting out are really, really good, and they're coming out with some really cool stuff right now. I think they just finally released a USA model or a made in Japan model, something like that, that's a little bit higher end from the import stuff that we've been seeing from them. Not that the import stuff is bad. Like I said, it's not. Gibson, I think Gibson is turning it around. But at any rate, whether they're turning it around or not, and this is for every guitar company out there, you have to protect your intellectual property. Period. End. If you don't do so, especially over a period of decades, like I said, I honestly don't know how you managed to win the first time. I really don't. And this is, like I said, this is one that I hope Dean comes out on top when it's all said and done. My personal opinion. So just based on that. That's my thoughts. That's my opinion. Do with it what you will. It's worth exactly what you paid for it. Adios.